What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Paul Thomas Anderson's new movie Licorice Pizza, which I saw this morning on 70mm at the Village East by Angelica. The theater is one of my personal favorites. It's a legit historic monument. There wasn't a cell phone in sight, and the movie started straight away without a single trailer. Ideal conditions for a perfect movie-going experience. I say all this so you'll understand my mixed emotions when I tell you that I intensely dislike the movie, and this is coming from someone who regards Paul Thomas Anderson as a strong contender for the best American director of the last 30 years. I have the utmost respect and admiration for Paul Thomas Anderson's body of work, so I hope you'll believe me when I say that all my criticisms that I'm about to share will be coming from a place of love. If I didn't love his work, I would have simply walked out of this movie after 30 minutes, maybe less. And before I go any further, I know full well that I'm going to be in the minority on this one. The movie's close to 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with both audiences as well as critics, with many people describing the movie as a new classic coming-of-age story like American Graffiti or Fast Times at Ridgemont High or Dazed and Confused. My audience straight up applauded at the end of the film, and anytime a movie that is both shot and projected on film manages to connect with people, I will always regard that as a net positive for film culture on the whole. But I can't remember the last time I saw a movie by a director that I love where I hated the final product so passionately. The one silver lining is the amazing performance by Alana Haim. You're going to be seeing a lot of her in the years to come, and because of her effortless charm, I imagine this movie's going to help her find a whole new army of fans, in addition to those who already follow her because of the Banshees and with their sisters. Also, I watched a video of the three of them discussing how to say Haim, so don't hate me if I'm butchering it. But without her in the movie, I probably would have chalked this up as a complete and total misfire. If any other filmmaker other than Paul Thomas Anderson had made this, I would never watch any of their movies ever again. The story of Licorice Pizza, and I'm using that word broadly, in that the complete and total lack of a story is this movie's Achilles heel. But the story is set in 1973 in the San Fernando Valley, and the threadbare, non-existent plot follows Alana Kane's unusual relationship with a child actor/entrepreneur named Gary Valentine, played by Cooper Hoffman, son of the great Philip Seymour Hoffman. Gary's in love with Alana and spends most of the movie unsuccessfully trying to woo her, all while launching one strange venture after another, mostly as an exercise to try and impress Alana and get her to work for him. And because this is a world and era that PTA knows very well, he fleshes out the setting with a wide variety of bizarre characters and strange scenarios, many of which are intended to be amusing or comedic. The movie's clearly going for this very light, very laid-back, easygoing style, but from my point of view, it was borderline unwatchable. Everything about this movie feels like the first draft of a story that needed a massive rewrite and polish. And I know PTA can do it. His script writing is one of his greatest strengths as a filmmaker. He knows exactly what he's doing, so I can only assume that Licorice Pizza is precisely the movie that he intended it to be. But the script almost seems to be an experiment to see if Anderson can completely strip away anything resembling an interesting story and still hold our interest, just through the charm and innocence of his central characters. And I'm all for a chill movie where a director tries to create a vibe where everybody's just taking it easy. A great example is the western Rio Bravo by Howard Hawks. But with Licorice Pizza, Paul Thomas Anderson's relaxed, borderline slack style of direction makes every scene feel like a first take where the actors were allowed just to make up whatever lines they liked. So scenes get started only just to kind of fizzle and die. And famous character actors will show up and babble incoherent nonsense, and then they're never seen or heard from again. Actors like Tom Waits or Sean Penn or director Benny Safdie, they briefly inject some life into their individual scenes, but it's almost as if Paul Thomas Anderson is losing interest halfway through each scene, falling asleep in the director's chair, and then moving on to the next scene. Apart from being incredibly unsatisfying, the overall effect on me was that nothing I was watching on the screen was consequential at all. It was all totally disposable and totally forgettable. And Bradley Cooper, who I love, he is completely totally wasted in these random and ridiculous scenes about the tyrannical and idiotic producer John Peters. But the main reason this movie fails for me is that it utterly loathed and detested the character of Gary. From my point of view, he had about as much charisma as a giant cancerous tumor that you suddenly find on your ass and you want to get it hacked off immediately. I hated listening to him. I didn't like looking at him. I hated the shows his character was performing in. I was bored to tears with all the businesses his character was trying to get going. I couldn't fucking stand him. The good news is that the character Alana spends most of the movie telling him how annoying he is, and she's right. He is annoying. So annoying that my hatred for him spilled right over into the rest of the movie. Cooper Hoffman's father might have been one of the greatest talents of his generation and a brilliant collaborator for PTA on many of his movies. But Cooper, I'm going to take about a 5 or 10 year break from watching him in anything and then circle back, if ever, because frankly, I'd rather not watch movies at all than see him perform ever again. What makes this movie especially frustrating is that Paul Thomas Anderson is one of the only filmmakers left alongside Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino where they're actively fighting to keep film alive. They shoot on film and, when possible, project their movies on film. And I fucking love film. There's a physical texture to the experience when it's projected that's completely different aesthetically from digital projection or watching a movie on Blu-ray. And obviously this format war was lost a long time ago and the industry has totally moved on, but I hate to see these rare opportunities for the medium get squandered on a movie as empty and directionless and pointless as this one. Especially when I've seen PTA make movies that I regard as outright masterpieces, like There Will Be Blood and Boogie Nights. He deserves a place in the history books just from those two movies alone, but he has tons of great work to his name, including his many music videos which often get overlooked, and I've lost track of how many episodes of my podcast Wrong Reel that I've devoted to his career, but there have been many. But he's one of those great directors where anytime they make a movie, I will get my ass off the couch and go to the theater, and don't get me wrong, I still regard him as one of the greatest directors alive, and I will be first in line for his next movie, but Licorice Pizza, it's easily my most disappointing movie experience of the year. I probably should have digested the movie for a few hours before attempting a review, or maybe just not said anything at all. I hate to be a buzzkill, and if you loved it, I'm jealous. You had the experience I was hoping for. So I think I've now successfully vomited all the hate out of my system, and now I can move on with my life. Because in general, with my podcast and my YouTube channel, I try and focus on praising shows and movies that I love, and not taking a giant dump on legendary directors. But Anderson, he's a giant, so I don't feel too guilty about disliking one movie in his filmography. But the rest of his work, everybody should absolutely check it out and decide for yourselves. But that's all I have for now. If you enjoyed this little temper tantrum, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. I hope everyone enjoys the movie much more than I did, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.